Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are at the end of Season 1 of True Detective. This is Episode 8. And as the credits roll, I have a confession to make. The long and short of it is, I'm an idiot. There's a particular term I've been using throughout this series, and potentially another series. I don't quite know what videos have this term in it, but I feel the need to clarify things, and I don't usually do so with this level of scrutiny or specificity, but I just feel dumb. Apparently, the term chomo doesn't mean what I thought it meant, and I need to be totally unironic and clear about this. I thought it meant something similar to chud, like some kind of, disaffected, angry, incel-leaning kind of dude. That's what I thought that term meant. I thought it was a euphemism for that. I made that assumption based on the fact that it just sounded like chud. It kind of sounded like that. Apparently it means something very different. It's a euphemism for a pedo, basically. And it's like a prison-based term. It arose in prisons. I didn't know that. So I know it's a bizarre tangent to start this final episode review commentary on, but I realized it because I looked it up out of curiosity. And I realized, fuck, I've been an idiot. I've been throwing this term around because I interpreted it phonically. Onomatopoeically. I thought it meant something just because I thought it sounded like it should mean that thing. I've made that mistake in my life in other contexts, so forgive me for that. If I've used that term, which I have, just disregard it. I used it wrong. Anyway, right away here, this episode is revealing to us that this guy just might be the killer. I don't know, guys. I'm getting a few signs and symbols from that scene that this dude might be our killer. He's an inbred, chubby white dude living in some sort of shack. And in this scene, we see that he's tied up his own father in some kind of creepy BDSM fashion and is just torturing the guy. He's talking to him, and we don't even know if he's alive. He could be talking to a corpse. That's how nuts this guy is. He's got a nice Anubis black dog, which, funnily enough, looks a lot like the black dog. In fact, it looks almost exactly like the black dog from Stalker, the god of death, Anubis. But this is our scarred, green-eared goblin man. This is the guy. And he's obsessed about media. What's interesting about it is he's like a unchained golem. It's like the media has brainwashed or hypnotized him, but it hasn't bound him. It hasn't controlled him. It hasn't raised him up, hasn't given him a purpose. All it's done is given him things to mimic. All it's done is appeal to his ape brain, as if he's an idiot, and give him things to mimic. And a lot of people who end up being murderers, abusers, molesters, whatever, they're low IQ people. They have low impulse control. They don't know themselves times 1,000. Like they're morons, right? They're like this guy. Psychopaths are usually not intelligent. The Hannibal Lecter meme of the genius psychopath is a dramatic construct. Most psychopaths are actually really fucking stupid. And that's what this show accurately portrays. This guy is basically copying things he's seen. And because he's been abused, he's just copying the abuse, right? It's implied that... Well, it's not implied. It's straight up told to us by Aunt Jemima in the previous episode. She said this guy's dad burned his face in a fireplace. Very Game of Thrones, Clegane type shit. And all he's doing is replicating the behavior because he lacks self-awareness to such an extent that he's just a drone. He's a wayward drone. He's like a zombie. And, you know, he spouts off a bunch of creepy shit. He's like, I could see the infernal plane, blah, blah, blah. And then he starts feeling up this chick. She's like, oh, I'm going to burn your eggs. I'm going to, you know. And then he does some creepy shit, of course, in this sort of hoarder house. If you've ever had relatives that hoard shit, that's a sign of profound stupidity. If your house looks like a rotting newspaper garbage dump, maybe you're an idiot. Just maybe you're a retard. I don't know. Again, I'm using that term in the medical sense. No judgment. Except for the characters in this scene, I am going to judge fake characters. Because they're not real. So, here we have the St. James boat. And we have our epic heroes literally forcing this guy at gunpoint to watch a VHS. He's like,
I don't want to watch this. It's not even 480i. The CRT TV, it's torture. I'm used to 1080p. God, I can't even see what's happening. This is pure pain. How can you do this to me?
Marty can't even watch it. He's like, I'm not Rust. I'm going to just go ahead and have a beer near the fishing poles while this guy gets traumatized. I love it. They pan out and he just screams. This scene is proving that this guy was not actually that involved. He was not that evil. He was a pawn, but he was a high-level pawn, which is almost more dangerous than catching an actual guy from the top echelons of this type of shit. Because this guy didn't even know what he was doing. He was a useful idiot of the highest order. Useful idiot, Purple Heart, Epic Vietnam Medal. Oh, you were the most useful of useful idiots. And this guy goes, listen, man, I was just following orders. I mean, again, this is kind of corny, but that's literally something he says. But he doesn't say it, that blatantly. I'm summarizing it superficially. He says, chain of command, that's the phrase. It's not I was following orders, which is the epic Nazi cliche. It's chain of command, which is a little bit better. I gotta hand it to the writers here. They're like, well, we can't just, if we're gonna frame this guy as a Nazi drone type of person, we can't actually say I was following orders. We have to say something else. What do we say? What about chain of command? That's not bad. It's not a bad way of saying that. To characterize this guy, that's not bad. It's fucking alcoholic Jell-O chin. That's what I'm going to call that. If you're an alcoholic, you get what I'm going to call Jell-O chin. You look like this guy. But he's basically saying, I trusted the family. The family members said to me that they solved the case with this wayward daughter who ended up dead. And again, I gotta make a comment here. There's been a lot of demoralizing propaganda that is anti-family. This show traffics in it because it talks about creepy families in the South, breeding with people who are similar to you, cousins fucking cousins, blah, blah, blah. If you're fucking your first cousin, that's not a good idea genetically. That's just scientifically retarded. You shouldn't take that truth to an extreme to where you're like, family is bad. I'll let the state be my family. The state will be my mommy and my daddy and tell me what to do. That's not what this series is trying to tell you. And if anything is blatantly trying to tell you that, it's bullshit. Ignore it. Don't give it any energy. Don't criticize it, because that just means you're devoting attention to it. The way to kill something is to atrophy it of attention, because your attention is your time. And time is money, that's true. Money is also time. Attention is currency. Don't obsess over criticizing something, even if you think it might do some good, because the best way to kill something is to starve it to death. It's like in Halo 1, when Cortana talks about the flood, and she says the only way to kill the flood is to starve it to death. That's true. To kill an idea, you don't kill its adherents, and you don't attack the idea, because attacking the idea just gives it attention. What you do is you ignore it, which is hard to do. Ignoring a bully is not a good idea. That's what we're all told as kids. Or if you were raised around the same time I was, it was like, well, just ignore your bullies. No, bullies are not ideas. They're people who are traumatized idiots who you have to punch in the face to send them the message to fuck off and stop messing with you. That's a totally different thing. The problem is the narrative is similar. Ignoring a bully is the wrong way to go about that. Ignoring an idea is the way to kill it. Deprive it of attention, deprive it of food. Ignore it. Don't attack it. Don't obsess over it. Don't act like a hero. The way to be a hero when you're fighting a bad idea is to pretend it doesn't exist. And if you pretend hard enough, and you convince others, like I'm trying to convince you now, to simply ignore the idea, you will be the hero, because you'll kill the idea. Now, speaking of killing shit, let's rubber band back to the final episode here. Basically, Rust and Marty have been like, we're not bluffing or fucking with you. Our assassin father will kill you. Whether you're a useful idiot for the pedo elites, or you're an actual pedo elite. You're dead. So now we're back at the nice abandoned security firm. I love this, man. They picked the perfect location for this. It's like this gray-ass Home Depot furnished office building. It looks like something out of Office Space. It's perfect. The vertical blinds and everything. And there's no employees because Marty's business basically failed. He tried his best, man. I wouldn't wish failure upon the guy. I mean, he quit the police business and he was like, well, I'll become an independent detective. Good man. Good for trying that. That's cool. Private detectives are badass, man. They're a dying breed. I know that's a cliche, but I'd love to see like a modern show, like a 2024 show about a private detective. Like, what is that scene even like now? That's an untapped well, man. Write about that. Make a show about that. A 2024 private detective trying to navigate all the new laws and new regulations and new ways of doing things. That would be badass, man. That'd be cool. Make him a zoomer. Give him the fucking side fade haircut and all that shit. Give him some riz. I'd love to watch that. That would be kick-ass. And again, there's this wonderful moment in this. They're talking about the guy with green ears. And they're kind of grasping at straws. But they're using logic. They're like, well, this is a stretch, but let's look at it. And Marty finds this picture. Marty saves the day, man. If he hadn't been here, if he hadn't done this, he uses epic real estate knowledge and says, that's the same house. Look at the paint. What if the guy we're looking for was putting his paintbrush behind his ear when he painted this house? That is so beautiful, man. That's Agatha Christie tier. And if you've never read Agatha Christie, there's only one story you really need to read. The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. That's her best work. If you don't want to read 35 mystery books, just read that. The Murder of Roger Ackroyd is her best work. And Then There Were None is another good book, but it's not as good as Roger Ackroyd. Just read what she did that was her best, you know. Just look at that. Or you know, fucking read the Cliff's Notes, read the Wikipedia, read a summary, whatever. The moment in this series when they look at the green paint, that is that good. Because Agatha Christie is like the gold standard for mysteries. For a reason. Because she wrote The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. That's why she's the best. The other stuff she wrote is good, but that's the reason that she's remembered. She wrote that story. That story is fucking genius. So let's rubber band back to things here. They're digging up old dirt between each other, and Marty's like, well, let's talk about the fight. And Marty's like, well, you know, did you hold back? And he goes, well, yeah, because I would have had to kill you because you were so goddamn mad. And here's where Rust basically says, your wife raped me, man. I was drunk. She was probably drunk too. And Marty calls him out. He's like, listen, you wouldn't have let her rape you if you didn't want it a little bit. Very complicated, crazy shit. And, you know, Russ goes, yeah, of course I'm culpable, you know? Of course I share a little bit of the blame. This is raw shit, man. Conversations like this don't take place in movies or books anymore. This is deep shit. And Marty goes, well, you know what, man? I can read you better than you think I can. And he goes, well, it's hard to find something in a man who rejects people as much as you do. And Russ goes, that's just how I roll, man. I never tried to infect you with my solitude. And he says something so true. He's like, everybody judges all the time. You know, judge not lest ye be judged. That's one of the most bullshit, fake inserted lines in the quote-unquote Bible, which is a portmanteau of 5 billion different monks and a whole bunch of kings fucking with it and editing it and hacking it. You can't take that shit whole cloth. Everybody judges all the time. When you look at a fucking apple in the supermarket and you find a bruise on it and you pick a different apple, that's a judgment. You're literally judging that object. And you do the same thing with people. That's what they're saying. It's an off-the-cuff, shitty way to put it, but that's what they're saying. They're not saying judgment is good or evil. They're just saying it's a reality. We all do it all the time. We all do it all the time. No one's going to get that reference. Go watch Ideas Man by MDE. That video is only on YouTube because of some craftiness in how it was uploaded. It's a wonderful little gem. In fact, don't watch it, because if too many of you do, if the 2 people watching this watch that, it could be taken down. That's my fucking ego talking. Anyway, it's a good video. It's very funny. So, they're at an old folks' home. They're talking to this old woman. And she's the one who owned the house, the green house. And Marty's like, this is a shot in the dark times 100, but do you remember who painted your house? And this Werther's original grandma, she's literally eating a fucking Werther's candy. I feel like that's a subtle joke. She's like, oh yes, there's a nice Cthulhu boy. He came up from Roulier. He was a vampire squid originally that transferred his consciousness to a human body, but because his father abused him, he became evil. I think he must have raped and killed children, but I just wanted my house painted, and I'm a cynical, amoral boomer, so I hired him, and Yes, he painted my house a very nice shade of green, but he did have a very scarred face. That is true.
It's like, thanks, Grandma. It's like, Russ, can we burn this funeral home to the ground? This glorified funeral home? I know it's an old folks' home, but basically it's a glorified funeral home. It's just the oxygen that they're breathing and that's oxidizing their tissues is like a kind of slow fire. It's almost like, crawling out of the ocean. It's not coming up from hell. It's like we're descending down from heaven, as above, so below. So these old folks, they're basically just slowly burning, so why don't we just accelerate it?
And then Russ goes, Marty, that's some really occult, esoteric, vague shit. I don't think the viewers are going to understand what the fuck you're saying. But also, no, we can't just burn down an old folks' home. That's some eugenics shit. What are you, a Canadian or something?
No, that's creepy shit. I agree with that.
So anyway, they're just going through the motions of tracking this guy, so I'm riffing while they do that. The creepy, dusty house with the covered religious idols. You have a lot of religious idols and dolls. Hasn't saved you from being a psycho. It's almost like the more psychotic you are, the more little totems you have to surround yourself with to prevent yourself from doing crazy shit. So here's where Rust... This is like a camera panning over an a silo of nukes. These are linguistic nukes. He's like, this is all the evidence. This is everything. And Rust's father figure here, he's looking at it kind of sadly, kind of cynically. It's like this guy is a future version of Rust. He's another version of him living a different life, and he's communing with his younger self. They take a shot at the same time. They look the same. They have the exact same hair, the exact same mustache. That's important. That's not random. It's intentional. There's a lot of random shit in this show. That's not random. So, we cut to another scene. Here's Marty having his own type of encounter with somebody. He's the younger, less experienced detective, just like this black guy compared to his black partner is the younger detective. He's the younger guy. He's the Marty equivalent, right? The season 2 of this show that happened in a different timeline featured these two black guys. I want to see that shit, man. That would have been better than the season 2 that we got. But that's the point of this scene, This is the Marty analog. The Rust analog is the older detective that's not here. So basically they're talking about the case. And he's like, look, I know you're suspicious. I know you've got orders. I know you are looking at us. You're not wrong for doing that. But we've got something that we can't tell you about unless we're sure about it. We're not going to obstruct justice. We're not going to go around the law. But if we find a guy, if we find some evidence that's like blatantly obvious, do you want to be the hero? Do you want to be my successor? Is what Marty's saying to this guy. Do you want to be the new Black Marty? And the guy finally is like, okay, call me. Here's my number. God, these white trees. What the fuck is the deal with these dead swamp trees, man? That's some creepy shit. What, have you been dumping pure plastic estrogen and carcinogens into the swamp and killing all the trees? Or did they just do that naturally? I don't know. I'm not from the South, so I don't know. Where I'm from, the trees all have needles of acid and turpentine type shit. Which is good for you, by the way. A little bit of terpenes or turpentine or pine will kill parasites. It's good for you. Take a little bit. Don't go nuts. Take too much, it'll poison you. But anyway. God damn it. Rust is like, I taste aluminum and ash. Now, what does that remind you of? To me, having just watched Stalker and done that long-ass bullshit review that I did of it, the smell of industrial chemicals is what comes to mind. Burnt wood, processed matter, and metal. That's an industrial smell. The farts of the industrial system forced upon you. And what's funny is I'm reminded of Marty's quip where he told Rust, why don't you follow your nose? When Rust said, hey man, this is like episode 2, he said, you smell like pussy, like you've got some high tide on you, you know? Your sense of smell is not developed. Your pineal gland, your brain, your third eye, none of it's awake, so you can't smell shit. It's a common symptom among autistic people that they have hypersensitive senses of smell. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's useful. And Marty made fun of Rust. He was like, oh, follow your nose. Rust's sense of smell is important in this show. It's not a small thing. It's not a trivial thing. It seems trivial. But like a lot of stuff in this, it only seems that way. Because you're not used to interpreting it as important. You're used to dismissing it as a viewer. That's why this show is so great. It subtly sort of tickles you to change your views of certain things just while you're watching the show, you know, not necessarily in your whole life. But while you're watching this, you're prompted to see differently. It's what art is supposed to do. It's what good art does, ideally, is it says, look at something differently. You know, the good art doesn't do that to you. It doesn't prompt you to do that in order to corrupt you or make you evil or whatever. It just says, try looking at things from a different angle. See what you see. You know? Don't look at things the same way your whole fucking life, or you'll be miserable. Unless you're like 50, you know, and you've picked a way to see reality and, you know, you're content with it. That's one thing, you know. But even if you're 50, sometimes it's good to shake things up a bit, you know. Change your view a bit. Just as an experiment. Just to see what you can see. You can see more than you think you can. Just give yourself a fucking chance. Take a chance. Do an experiment on yourself. You are your own subject. If you're respectful and careful, you can achieve a lot just by gently experimenting on yourself. Anyway, Marty's broken into the house. Rust finds the dog who's been shot. There's more creepy murals. There's some kind of creepy ass deer guy on the wall there. And he says, on your knees. That's important. The language he uses. I'm going to overinterpret shit from now on because this is the final fucking episode. It's the last chance I have to indulge myself in that way. Rust, who is our failed Christ clone type guy, is telling this satanic, evil golem dude, get on your knees, as in worship me. This is your last chance. You refused Christ. I'm like Walmart dollar store Christ. If you don't at least bow to me, you're totally fucked. And this guy goes, no. And I love that. I love he doesn't give a speech. He just says no and runs away. And then we cut to Marty. He's infiltrating this creepy ass. The prevalence of dolls in this, it reminds me of Oh my god, we got to do comment. I got to comment on these shows. Ghost in the Shell, the two movies, the first and second one, they heavily feature dolls, especially the second one, which I think is better than the first. But Marty coming in here reminds me of that shit. And there's all this creepy, like, there's like sex mattresses and, you know, that stupid tree air freshener shit is a reference to the movie Seven. And there's like it's implied that they've been playing in period blood or something. They've been doing the worst shit you can imagine, you know. And so basically, Rust's like, you gotta have a fucking landline, man. You know, even if you're an ape, you've got a phone. The system has fucked you enough that you can't get away with creepy ape shit without us knowing. You can do it, you can actually be as creepy as you are, but you just gotta broadcast and monetize it and recontextualize it. That's the creepy truth of late-stage capitalist Western society, is you can actually do anything you want, even if it's totally heinous, but you've got to monetize it and broadcast it. That's my cynical side coming out. But anyway, you know, Rust is he does the best he can, or Marty, excuse me, does the best he can. Can't get much out of this chick. Then he bursts into this shed. Holy fuck. He meets the dad. And this guy looks like the guy in the bar. I never noticed that till now. He's got long white hair. He's emaciated. He looks like the father figure in the Alaskan bar scene. The guy that's the assassin. The guy that had the sniper rifle that shot at the useful idiot, right? This is the dark mirror analog of that. You know, in a way, Rust is using his father's wisdom and that father figure type character to solve this mystery. If you flip that, our serial killer has exploited his own father, his own heritage, his own genetic wisdom, his own family, whatever, in a dark way. In the reverse. And now, here we have Carcosa, some Civil War era fort with children's shoes. The first thing we see is a bunch of shoes. The red shoes. The Pizzagate red shoes. I'm not going to forget. Hearing about that, man, whether it's real or fake, that's a hell of a thing. It's a hell of a mind virus. Whether it's true or not. I mean, here we have a mummified infant, straight up. That's a human body in the sticks there. You know, all you Nordic Chads who think, I worship the black sun and Hitler was right and I want to return to tradition and be a Nordic pagan. This is the paganism that you would be returning to. This is real. They threw people into bogs. 11-year-old virgins were thrown into bogs, sacrificed in order to get corn to grow. You're going back in time. It's a trap. You're being sucked back into the past. Vacuumed, black holed into your ape lizard brain depths. Language is creepy, man. Ink is creepy. The Vampiroteuthis brain shit is not easy to accept. The alternative is you're gonna end up here. You're gonna be thrown into the trash, into Golgotha. Interesting how Carcosa and Golgotha kind of sound similar. It's a garbage bin. The ape lizard-brained idiots are discarded. Doesn't mean that if you're able to reject those things that you're immediately divine. It just means that you've avoided the first few traps of ascension, of evolution, of maturity. Pick your term. It all means the same thing. These terms all imply the same process of self-improvement. Read Carl Jung, man. Carl Jung is the key to everything. If you just read him, and then you look at reality and all the different stories and narratives and psyops and shit that you're seeing, none of it will affect you. Carl Jung, he's so based, it's insane. And the reason I'm thinking about him is because this series is trafficking in very Jungian symbolic ideas. It's like directly, huffing that kind of shit. They're in a maze of sticks. It's like the brambles, the thorns under the rose. It's like the labyrinth of the Minotaur. Wilderness stick sculptures by that artist that I mentioned. This is the ultimate version of that. And he's in this concrete dome. It's like the Hagia Sophia. It's like a big, rotted church, stripped of all its symbols and its art, and replaced with pagan crap. It's a desecrated church. Looks like an eye. And Rust has a vision. He sees a blue portal, some kind of singularity or black hole. But it was an illusion. It was a distraction so that this guy could stab him. And he says, take off your mask. My God, man. The Burnt Orange Heresy. Talking about masks. It's his shadow self. The polar opposite of him. These two characters both responded to the indifference and the absurdity of existence in the polar opposite ways that they did. Rust fought evil, confronted it to try to minimize it. This guy said, I'm just going to dive as deep as I can. I'm going to get to the bottom in a different way. They're both trying to get to the bottom of things in a literal and a metaphorical sense. This serial killer guy is like, I'm just going to do the acts. I'm just going to experiment. I'm going to play around to such a fucked up extreme that I'm just raping and eating children. I'm just going to go nuts in order to see if there's any wisdom. And if you go back to the beginning of this episode, he thinks he's seeing insight, but he's living in a rotting hellhole. His church is desecrated. It's barren. His dome, his Hagia Sophia dome, is totally bereft of symbols. Dark. It's dead. And the sad thing is, Marty, for doing the opposite, for trying to be good, his life is like that. His whole life is like a desecrated, empty church. He has no family. He has no friends. He's alone. So both of those extremes are equally draining. They're depressing. Rust has had to give up as much as this fucked up killer has had to give up. And the killer ended up dead. Rust got to live. It's the one thing he got. In episode 1 or 2 of the series, Marty asks him, if you're a cynic or a nihilist, what do you really want out of existence? And Rust goes, I want to bear witness. That's all he gets. All he gets is to look at shit, to observe and record. That's what he wanted. That's what he gets. It's like Apocalypse Now. Everyone gets everything he wants. God damn it, man. I may record a review of Apocalypse Now, like right after this. That's a movie we've got to talk about. We meaning you and the one person who watches this shit. But anyway, massively rubber banding back to the actual show, we have the aftermath, the hospital. And Marty's like, don't describe to me how incestuous white people have had to become in the face of our birth rates declining. I really don't want to hear that from two black guys. It's just kind of like pouring lemon juice on a cut, you know? Like, maybe my people are dying, maybe they're not, but you don't have to torture me with it, man. For fuck's sake, I never owned any slaves. Fuck you. That's definitely what Marty is saying in this scene. And finally, his Mossad-assigned Jewish clone wife comes in to smile at him. Oh, how ingratiating. She's got all her rings on. Oh, all her golden Sauron rings. How beautiful. Brother, fuck a druid in the wilderness, man. This is just so fucking artificial. Also, the actors they picked for his daughters looked nothing like the daughters, but whatever. Finally here, Marty is honest. His facade falls apart. And like the killer told Rust, take off your mask. He finally takes it off. He's like, I just have to cry. He's like, I can't be the fake epic patriarch, daddy, tribal leader, god figure for you. I'm a human being. I'm not a fucking character. I'm a person. And I'm gonna cry. And then here, of course, we have the epic news coverage. Well, lots of bodies, but there's no conclusive evidence that it has anything to do with the Tuttles or any other important famous family. There's no evidence of that. It's definitely just a random inbred person. Despite the fact that Jesus gave his left eye in this scene, got it bloodied out of his head, like Paul Muad'Dib's son merged with the worms and got 4,000 years of peace in the Dune books and that whole timeline of lore. It doesn't matter. Everything went back to how it was before. You accomplished nothing. You just stalled. You got a temporary bit of stalling done. Well, maybe this time I'm not going to stall. Maybe this time we're going to play things differently. That's what Rust is saying. Basically, he's demoralized. He saw all this footage and he's like, despite the fact that I sent everything out to everybody, I'm basically screaming that I'm LARPing as Jesus in this scene. It's Jesus with a mustache. If he shaved the sides of the mustache, he'd look like Hitler. It's very, wouldn't take much to change the the optics there. That's all I'm saying. It's a very small change you'd have to make. Okay. Anyway. Rust is like, well, I saw him, saw who he was. And Rust is like, We just did a. Like, Rust is right. He's like, how are you not demoralized? We did all this shit and nothing's changed. It's almost like nothing changes no matter what you do, because that's reality. Reality is a way station, a middle earth between heaven and hell, and there's always going to be demons coming up here, and there's always going to be angels falling down. That's just how it is. And Marty has finally surpassed Rust. He's like, I've accepted that we're in Midgard or Limbo or whatever. If you can't accept that, man, you're not going to have a fun time here no matter how much you sacrifice. Go fuck yourself. Go eat some pudding. Get hydrated, because you lost a lot of blood. You probably need to hydrate. Then the camera pans back to the creepy zone here, the father shed with all the deer antlers. Interesting that the shed that the dad was kept in was all deer antlers. And then the creepy house that looks like a face. It's kind of a montage kind of thing we're getting here. Over the bayou, the giant sewer that is reality. We're just turds floating down the sewer of material reality. There's the epic pygmy Yggdrasil tree. It's not like rock formations like Ayers Rock, and a bunch of the similar looking formations in Arizona are actually giant trees that were cut down years ago and shouldn't have been cut down because they were holy things. It's not like that's the case. Don't look into that. I'm nuts. And good old Marty, man. He's like, whatever happens, man, you did some crazy shit. You delved into some deep wells of knowledge and pulled out some things that we all needed to see. And you're now pretty fucked up. So whatever happens, I got your back. He's got a purple shirt on, sweatpants. That's the Marty Riz, the Marty Fit. I like that. I wear that type of shit. And Marty's like, you know what? Maybe I have done enough, I didn't change anybody's mind. Nothing's changed. But at least I tried. Maybe he had to at least perform that act of that way of expressing his opinion. Maybe he had to try, Maybe that was his reason for being. And he's starting to cry. You've never seen him cry. We saw Marty cry, It's not an easy thing to cry if you're a guy. It's difficult. Doesn't matter what culture you're raised in. But crying is good. It chemically flushes substances that your brain produces to respond to stress. Tears physically flush them out of your head, literally. It's physically good for you. Crying is like working out. I think I've said this once before. But anyway. Rust is saying, when I was near death, I had a sort of DMT psychedelic experience. And he's like, despite all the drugs I did, I never had this experience. But when I almost died, I finally felt that sense of unity. I felt like I wasn't just a failed Christ clone in a shitty CIA cloned meat suit. I felt like something more for a second. And he said, even when I was dying, I was like, yeah, I'm okay with dying. I accepted death. He said, my mind, my consciousness was just gone. I didn't exist. But even despite the fact that I was gone, I became part of this thing called love. This John Carpenter's The Thing, Cthulhuoid, communal, communist, fungal-brained network. He's like, for a second I was like, I'm okay with being that. Whatever that is, whatever it is or isn't. I tasted it. I was part of it. And he's like, that was everything. When I was at my lowest point, the thing that saved me was love. I've been there, man. Somebody came into my life when I wanted everything to just burn. I just wanted everything to be gone. And somebody came into my life and said, I love you, despite your flaws. I want to connect with you. I want to be with you. I want to share your existence. That's not a small thing. It's not, a one-night stand or a Vegas whore session or some kind of crap. It's two people connecting. That's all it takes. It just takes two. That's it. Gay, straight, trans, blah, 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 whatever. Doesn't matter. As long as you're not raping or abusing people. If you're connecting with somebody and that connection elevates you or saves you from slipping into hell, then it's a good thing. It's a good connection. It should have happened. And now they're talking about the stars, and they're saying, well, there's a lot of stars out there, and there's a lot of darkness. But the stars don't give up. Despite how black and bleak it is, they keep shining. That's the essential message, Marty says Jesus here. Yeah. It's a reversal. Instead of Jesus carrying the cross, Marty is the cross. He's carrying Christ here. The cross has become animated, About time, man. Christ's carried the cross long enough. It's about time the cross carried Christ for a bit. And again, Rust says, used to be darker. There's more stars now. And they'll keep coming. The only reason the sky looks so black is because of light pollution, Then we have a nice set of constellations. I'm sure you could probably invent a schizo interpretation of which constellations they showed here. It's like, oh, they showed Pisces, Sirius, and the Big Dipper, and that means blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go deep enough into that, this ending scene to, craft an interpretation. But there it is, guys. There's season 1. One of the best series ever broadcast on TV. I could do 10 more reviews of this and say completely different things about this. Please watch it. It's very good. It's improved my life to see it. I hope it improved yours, whether you watched it with my commentary or not. And I hope that your life is getting better. If not, it will. If you're going through some hard times, they're temporary. Your life will get better. Time heals all wounds. That really is true. It's cliche, but it's true. Again, anyway, thank you for watching this. I love you all, and I wish you all the best. Peace out.